Hello, Ryan here, aka Mac, and welcome. So, salvaging is often hot topic on my stream, with many people asking questions about how it will play in Star Citizen. So today I'd like to just go through what we know, what to expect, plus I will break down the process of how I will approach salvaging with my org. These videos are made possible thanks to my very generous patrons and channel members. Thank you guys so much for all the support. In particular to Anthony Riffle and Spiky Imp for becoming my latest channel members. Thank you both so much. All the links are in the description below if you would like to learn more. So we know the salvaging mechanic isn't really coming anytime soon, as it requires the iCache to be fully working as intended. Also, CIG are prioritizing current in-game mechanics like cargo hauling, bounty hunting and so on, fleshing out further what we have in-game currently now. But many of you are wanting to talk about salvage on stream, so I thought I'd put a video together talking further about what we currently know, as it's going to be a very exciting career path in Star Citizen. And although we have no knowledge of exactly how we're going to be dealing with salvaging hands-on, we have heard them talk often about how they see it playing out. Now in Star Citizen, salvaging will be a broad spectrum with many varying degrees to how someone could approach salvaging a derelict ship. This will depend greatly on what ship you have, the equipment available to you, and your amount of knowledge and time. Basically, you won't need a dedicated salvaging ship to salvage a derelict ship. In its simplest form, it begins with taking any loose items lying around, boxes or cargo or personal effects, even looting bodies. When personal inventories make it into the game, people will have boxes of equipment lying around with weapons, armor, clothing, tools, components, subcomponents, and other bits and bats that they may have needed. Not to mention any personal items like collectibles or artifacts that they could have brought to display in their personal quarters. Depending on the size of your ship and the room available, you could take as much or as little of what you find lying around, picking out the items that you think hold most value. For example, you could find an exclusive armor piece or a Banu artifact that you would consider to be more valuable than a crate of weapons. From there, we heard about the option to siphon commodities from derelicts like fuel, water, oxygen, precious gases and liquids, and even data. Now it is possible that this will require some form of equipment, or at least a tether of some kind from your ship to the derelict to transfer these items, but it could be very useful siphoning this stuff to keep your tanks full, or maybe you could just find something of value. But when it comes to data, there could be some real value here. For example, there could be coordinates for stashes, or locations of worth like known mineral deposits, or on the very top level, new jump coordinates to an undiscovered system. Data as a commodity can be just as valuable, so extracting that from a derelict's computer or server could certainly be worth the time and effort. Whether you will need special equipment to do so, or whether it will be via a ship's console, is still kind of unknown right now, but this data could be encrypted and require a bit of skill to crack it open. Next up is the physical removal of ship weapons and components like power plants, shield generators, computers, quantum drives, coolers, jump drives, batteries, subcomponents, computer blades, maybe even relay nodes like we've heard in the latest Inside Star Citizen. The list of potential components that are worth salvaging is extensive, each with varying degrees of value based on the component specs and condition. These items could be extracted by hand, loaded onto trolleys or into boxes and placed in your cargo hold to sell on, or replace them with your own components as way of an upgrade. This process will likely be very time consuming, but equally rewarding when you consider the actual prices of some of these components. It will also require some level of skill and knowledge of which components are more valuable than others, and knowing the location of each of these components on whatever ship that you come across will be important, as knowing one ship well doesn't necessarily mean that you will know another ship equally as well. The next stage of salvaging would be hull scraping. Now this will require some form of equipment. They have spoken about maybe the use of a handheld device like a multi-tool to scrape materials off the hull, or the use of a dedicated salvaging ship for larger jobs like a vulture for example, and if you come across an even bigger ship you may need to be using your reclaimer. Now this is where dedicated salvaging and ship knowledge will really play its part. Ships will be made up of many different materials throughout, which ties into the whole economy system, but that is another conversation, but it also ties into the salvaging system. For example, you may have a small amount of space for storing materials that you have scraped from a hull, and knowing exactly which part of that ship holds the most value could be vital to making the most money. What is incredible is that each ship is different. Scraping the hull of an Aurora will be different to scraping the hull of a Mustang, and this understanding is what will set each salvager apart from the rest. Having as much knowledge of as many ships and their material makeup as possible will give you the edge over those who don't. It will also make it worthwhile checking a ship that has been partially scraped or salvaged, as some materials of value may have been left behind if the previous salvager was less clued up. Now finally, the last degree of salvaging is using the maw. This is the process of breaking up the ship into parts and recycling it into the hold, breaking it down into reusable commodities. Now only dedicated salvaging ships can do this, and the Reclaimer is probably the only one that we know of at this time. I think the Vulture can do something similar, but instead of having a claw, it just uses lasers and tractor beams. But this is the final part of salvaging, and this is literally removing that ship from the world, breaking it up and putting it into your hold to sell on for raw materials. But these are the varying degrees of salvaging, and as much as we have no idea as to how it will all function at this time, I can see everyone will approach it in their own way and determine what they would consider worth their time and effort. Now I'd like to go through the process that my org and I will go through when we do come across a derelict ship. Think of it more as our salvaging protocol to ensure the safety of the crew. Now within my org, the SM Borg, we do have a salvaging division, and as I said, members of this division will have some protocol to follow for when they come across a derelict ship. Now this will be just to ensure the safety of all the crew members first and foremost, as that will be priority. But regardless of whether you are in a solo ship, a multi-crew ship, or a dedicated salvaging ship like the Reclaimer, it will all begin with calling it into the org headquarters, letting the org know where you are and what you're doing in case it all went south, and then we could send out maybe a quick response force to provide some help. But for the sake of this example, let's say my crew and I are in an Aegis Reclaimer. After I've called in to the headquarters with my location, the ship being used and its reg tags, the crew on board, and what we are doing, next up will be ensuring that the area of operation is safe. Now this will involve scanning the vicinity to see if there's anything sitting around in the shadows ready to ambush us, and while one member of the crew is scanning the local area, another member will be scanning the derelict ship, and depending on the scanner type and its capabilities, they will be checking for life forms on board, the derelict ship's reg tag, its known owner, what the cargo on board could be, and basically any information that could paint a clearer picture as to what happened to it and why it's now derelict. This information could also lead to bigger, better rewards, but at the very least it could save the life of the whole crew. Now with any information gained, we would run checks on the spectrum to see if it has been reported as missing, which could even lead to a reward that would be worth cashing in, or even some more information as to what the ship is doing there. But after all the initial scans are complete, we would send out the drones. Now we wouldn't send them out with the initial scans, as we don't want to have to wait for them to return to the ship, nor do we want to leave them behind should we discover something that would require a quick exit. Now these drones could take a much closer look at the ship and gather any more information like potential entry points, structural damage that could be dangerous, but also with the physical damage system it could give us a bit more information about the types of weapons that was used against it. For example, was the damage done by a Vanduul weapon, which could mean that the Vanduul clan could still be in the vicinity. So while the drones are doing their thing, we would prepare for boarding, getting suited up with EVA and armor suits that would hopefully protect us against the most likely problems that could be on board, like pirates, creatures and aliens, booby traps or volatile dangers that pose a threat. I would also distribute a range of weaponry that would have most contingencies catered for. Any tools, scanners and other salvaging related devices that might be of use would be boxed up, ready to bring across once the ship is cleared of any potential dangers. And depending on what the scanners have found, we may send in a security force first to clear the potential threats before proceeding. Now upon entering the ship, the first thing we will do, and this will be priority number 1, is to visually clear the whole ship from top to bottom, regardless of its size. This is to ensure that nothing will creep up on us while we are working, and depending on my crew numbers, we may split up and sweep the ship in teams, but initial objectives, aside from the clearing of any threats, would be to make it to the bridge to try and restore systems, power, gravity and life support, with other areas like engineering being possible key locations to get to in case systems need repairing or rebooting. When it comes to actually salvaging the ship, it would begin with taking the loose items of value first, like FPS weapons, armor and equipment, other items of value or use from lockers, personal quarters and such, like the cargo hold. These would then be transported across or piled up near the docking collar or entrance, ready to be transported back to our ship. Now we would check all of the internal and external components and weapons to see which are worth taking. Any subcomponents will be removed and boxed up along with computer blades, and anything worth taking will be removed and transported across to the Reclaimer's hold. While on the bridge of the derelict ship, we would hook into the ship's computer or black box to gather what information we could, which might have value or answer to questions that we want to know about why the ship is derelict. Now, CIG did say a while ago that if you wanted to, you could try to work out what happened to the ship, piecing together clues as to why it became derelict, or if you don't care about that, you can just go about salvaging it without finding out. I would personally most likely want to discover what happened. But once all the internal salvage work is complete, we would return back to the Reclaimer and get on with breaking down the ship, stripping the materials and grinding them up until all is gone. Now, I will point out that while some of the crew members are on the derelict, a member of the crew, one at least, would be on board, scanning the area of operations for any threat ready to call back the crew at any moment. But after there is nothing left of the ship of value, we would then get on our merry way to a landing zone to sell our findings, with the crew all gathering around the mess to do a debrief, plus we may crack open the 2947 bottle of Radagast that was found in the derelict's captain's quarters to celebrate a job well done. But that is how my crew and I would handle a derelict ship. Now, it will require a lot of time and effort to completely strip down a ship depending on its size, but it will be incredible multi-crew gameplay that will be a lot of fun working together. Obviously, being in the middle of nowhere means anything could happen. Players, pirates, AI, and eventually creatures and aliens could pose a threat and change things drastically. When we begin to hear about the engineering and repair mechanics, it should give us a lot more insight into what to expect from salvaging, as it will involve a similar process, but in reverse kind of. But until then, any snippet of information that we get from CIG in regards to how this vast mechanic will work will get me excited, and I truly cannot wait to get searching for derelicts. But that brings me to the end of the video. I do hope that you found it interesting and entertaining, and if you would like to hear more videos like this one, be sure to hit that subscribe button. Also, it is in your best interest to do so anyway, as we will be giving away a Mercury Star Runner once that ship becomes available to buy. Do tick that notification bell if you want to be notified when my videos go live, and if you can do me a big favour, hit that like button. Really helps the channel out. If you want to talk more about salvaging or anything Star Citizen, be sure to head over to twitch.tv/supermacbrothers Ryan. The link is in the description below. Everybody is welcome. Thank you again to my patrons and channel members for allowing me to make these kinds of videos. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.